The motorcade carrying Rosalynn Carter has begun its final journey this morning. The world will pay its respects to the beloved former First Lady over the next 3 days throughout several ceremonies across Georgia. A wreath laying will take place today at Georgia Southwestern State University. A tribute service will be held tomorrow, and her funeral will be held in the Carter's hometown of Plains, Georgia on Wednesday. Rosalynn Carter died last week at the age of 96. She is remembered as a humanitarian leader and a champion for mental health care. For more on this, we're joined by Andrew Och. He's a historian and documentarian focusing on the First Ladies of the United States. Andrew, thanks for joining us on this solemn occasion. You spent time with the former First Lady and the President, President Carter. Describe to our viewers, what was your interaction with her like? What was she like?
Sure. Nice to be here with you all and celebrate this life well lived in Rosalynn Carter. I've got family and friends down there in Plains, Georgia. I've become close with the Carter and Smith, the Rosalynn Smith Carter families over the years. And last year, I had the good fortune of being with Mrs. Carter and President Carter on her birthday. We were dedicating a statue there in the Rosalynn Carter Childhood Garden, which is right next to the house where she grew up in. It's really, Plains is a small town. It's a great town with loving, supporting community. I know the Carters will have a lot of people around them to support them and to provide love and remembrance and celebrate this life. But Mrs. Carter and President Carter got out of their motorcade vehicle and came to a little barbecue there as we were dedicating the statue. I was able to give Mrs. Carter a birthday gift of my books that were signed for her birthday, and she shook my hand and just said very, very kind things and just appreciated me being there, appreciated the town being there, appreciated the support. The Carters truly were selfless people. Mr. President Carter still is a selfless person, even saying, that his greatest accomplishment in life was getting Rosalynn to marry him. This is just a down-to-earth, small-town president and first lady, and honorable human beings and Americans to be remembered and celebrated forever.
Andrew, when I was sort of looking at her life, it occurred to me that sort of over and over and over again, she kind of remade herself in a way. She starts out being kind of a military wife, and she's at home taking care of the kids, and then eventually a farmer's wife. But then she ends up learning so much about the business that the former president says she knew more about the business on paper than he did. And then she's campaigning independently of him as he runs for governor, and she's successful at that. When they finally make it to the White House, she's sitting in on cabinet meetings, and she's, his number one confidant, essentially his number one aide. Over and over, she sort of fills these spaces where you would think she had no training, no prior training. What do you think it was about her personality, her character, what the stuff she was made of that made her successful in all these different areas?
Well, she's a naturally intelligent person. She's intelligent and she's educated. She was valedictorian at Plains High School. She was also very early in her school career there in Plains, her undergraduate, her elementary, junior high work. She was awarded a $5 award, which was huge in the late 30s, 40s by a local businessman for getting straight A's. She was on her all-girls basketball in Plains in the 30s and 40s. She did things that were non-traditional roles of women, and she stepped into areas of uncomfort to learn more and do more. You mentioned, the campaigning for governor. She was head of the Peanut Brigade, the grassroots effort for the presidential election. She had to teach and let the country know about this relatively unknown governor from Georgia and win. He wouldn't have gotten to the White House without her and her efforts and what she had learned along the campaign trail and what she tirelessly did in this true political partnership and love match. 77 years of marriage through ups and downs and military career, like you say, politics, areas that aren't really, easily navigated. And she did it with grace and poise and dignity and efficiency and she was really, really an incredibly accomplished person who really could do anything she set her mind to.
Andrew, just stand by, stick around, because we're going to include you in this conversation, but also bring in our CBS News senior national correspondent, Mark Strassmann, who's following all of this from Atlanta. Mark, just to update our viewers on what they're seeing right now, I don't know if you can see if you have returned where you are. But we do see Rosalynn Carter is set to depart the Georgia Medical Center in just a few moments. Why don't you take us through the rest of the day, what that will look like?
Sure, and I can see the return, so I'm good here. What you're looking at here is Phoebe Sumter Medical Center, which is the biggest hospital, the regional hospital in that part of Georgia where the Carters live. In other words, it's the closest major medical facility to Plains. Those are the remains of Mrs. Carter. The 3-day memorial for her that Georgia is staging and America is watching is now officially underway. From here, they are going to take a 20-minute drive to the Georgia Southwestern State University, where she is an alumna, and there's going to be a wreath-laying ceremony at the Rosalynn Carter Health and Human Sciences Complex there. Mrs. Carter, of course, extremely well known for her role with mental health and human sciences, mental health, all of that. She was very involved in that center that bears her name. From there, they are going to depart to Atlanta, to where I'm standing at the Carter Presidential Center in Atlanta. They'll arrive here mid-afternoon, 3:15 local time is when they're scheduled to get here. And there, her body will lie in the lobby of the Presidential Library and Museum. And from 6 to 10 tonight, members of the public can file past to pay their respects. This is the one chance, really, where everyday Americans who want to pay their respects to Mrs. Carter will have the opportunity to do that. But again, what you're looking at is the beginning of this 3-day remembrance of Mrs. Carter. Tomorrow there's going to be a tribute service to her attended by President Biden and Mrs. Biden, by Vice President Harris and her husband, and other invited guests and dignitaries. And then on Wednesday will be a private service and a private burial in Plains, Georgia, which again is about 3 hours south of where I'm standing here in Atlanta. So right now we're just waiting for the casket to come out and the trip to the wreath-laying ceremony to begin.
You know, I'm sort of curious. The Carters have become sort of a beloved couple in their post-White House life. But in Georgia, there must be a particular level of affection for the former First Lady. How can you sort of talk to me about how Georgia feels about her?
Sure. And what you're looking at, by the way, now is it looks as though the casket is going to come out. Mrs. Carter, as an example of the way people feel about her, the escorts that she has are her Secret Service agents, both past and present. Mrs. Carter in Atlanta, in Plains, and throughout the state of Georgia is an iconic figure. Her advocacy on behalf of mental health, of course, for the last 50 years, extremely well known. And now you can see the casket coming out now. Very solemn moment now outside the hospital as this 3-day journey begins. But Mrs. Carter is both respected and in many places revered by Georgians, the only First Lady from the state of Georgia ever, and a figure who became, if anything, even larger post-presidency than she did during her years as First Lady of the United States.
Andrew, as we look at the casket of the former First Lady Rosalynn Carter set to depart Georgia Medical Center in just a moment, I wonder if you could also add to what you were explaining to Anne-Marie earlier about her time in the White House. Of course, as a young child, I remember my fascination with the Carters because they had a daughter who was my age in the White House. And I imagined what that must be like. Of course, there have been other presidents, President Kennedy and President Lincoln and others, President Johnson, who had children at the White House, although I guess President Johnson's children were a little older by the time he became president. But I just wondered what that was like for the Carters, raising a child in the White House. And yet she was, by all intents and purposes, a sort of modern First Lady, as Anne-Marie pointed out, sitting in on cabinet meetings, but also a mom.
gravitate towards these younger first ladies with young families. We see in them what we'd like to see in ourselves. And of course, Amy was a celebrity of the White House, similar to the Obama daughters and the Bush daughters, and as you mentioned, the Kennedys and on and on. But there were also older brothers. The Carters have a big family, as I was mentioning, going back to Plains, and they've remained for the most part in Plains and in Atlanta and the surrounding areas, Americus, where we're looking now. I was very happy to see in the line of folks that came out, Mrs. Carter's younger sister, Alethea, and her daughter, Julie. So I'm seeing some friends there, some friends from the family that I knew would be there. But, Mrs. Carter's sister is in her 80s, and it's nice to see her out there to be able to pay tribute to her sister. And they've just been great friends to me over the years, and great advocates and promoters of their first lady, their sister, their aunt, their cousin, their relative there. And they do so much in and around Plains and in Georgia to celebrate Mrs. Carter and her achievements. I mean, we keep talking about mental health, but these achievements go on and on and on. There's the Carter Center for Mental Health Task Force. She was an honorary fellow at the American Psychiatric Association. She was a member of the National Mental Health Association, the Rosalynn Carter Symposium on Mental Health Policy, Women Leaders for Mental Health, Rosalynn Carter Fellowship for Mental Health Journalism. And she was also a strong advocate that got the Mental Health Addiction Equality Act of 2008 passed. And that's not even counting the work that she did for women, children, unemployment, the Habitat for Humanity. A lot of people think the Habitat for Humanity is the Carters' philanthropy or organization. It's not. They just saw a need, and that's where they put their time and their money and their efforts and their name and their celebrity that they would bring to that. But the Carters are a member of or contribute to Habitat for Humanity, just like me and my family have in the past, or you or anyone would or could. It's just they saw a need, they saw a good cause, and picked up hammer and hard hat and went in the trenches and walked the walk and talked the talk, which was another beautiful, wonderful thing about the Carters throughout their life of public service.
Andrew, I want to go back a little bit too, because many people are going to remember the Carters for all that they accomplished outside of the White House. But I want to go back just a little bit and talk a little bit more about her support for her husband. Jimmy Carter, he served one term. That the election loss in 1982, Ronald Reagan, was a tough loss. I'm curious if she ever spoke about how she supported her husband, how she felt about leaving the White House at that time, just like any insight into how she was able to navigate a pretty challenging time in her life.
Sure. Well, she didn't like it. I don't know many people that like to lose, and political competitions and elections, especially at the level of presidency, they're heated. They're heavy duty. I mean, that's the Super Bowl. That's the championship fight, and they lost. They weren't happy about it. Mrs. Carter did not mix words about it. She said openly she was very upset about it. She worked hard. She worked hard in those 4 years. She worked very hard, as we mentioned, in the years leading up to it, to get her husband known and out on the national stage and elected to president. But what the Carters did was they regrouped. They regrouped quickly. They went back to Plains, and they started their post-White House life. They continued for the majority of their post-White House life, nearly the entire time, advocating for world peace. They were part of the 1993 Oslo Peace Agreement. They got the Presidential Medal of Freedom, which is that was 1999, I believe. It's the highest civilian honor, and that was for all the work that they did in Habitat for Humanity and world peace and global peace. And I know that Mrs. Carter was associated with she said, do what you can to show you care about other people, and you will make our world a better place. They just constantly and tirelessly were looking to improve the world around them. And as soon as they got over that bitter loss to Ronald Reagan, they just put their work shoes on, put their hard hat on, their tool belt, and they got out and they started doing good things for not only Americans here domestically, but internationally for Mideast peace around the world, and just countless efforts and groups and advocacies and symposiums and speeches and travel and books. They just really, it's one of the most prolific post-White House lives of any first lady and president ever.
Mark, so after today, when do we expect that we will see other former first ladies and presidents? I mean, there's an iconic shot there. Yeah, a great shot there of all the former first ladies, including the late Barbara Bush there, of course, Rosalynn Carter, and Michelle Obama and Hillary Clinton. Do we expect that we will see some other former first ladies, perhaps even Dr. Joe Biden, and perhaps even former presidents?
Well, we're expecting to see President Biden and Mrs. Biden, that's for sure. The rest of the guest list remains a little bit of a mystery, as do whoever's the speakers at this tribute service tomorrow. I was struck, by the way, just that shot we all just saw of the Secret Service agents walking alongside the hearse one last time. These are Secret Service agents, both from who most recently worked with her and some from her past too, all, of course, part of this tribute to Mrs. Carter as this motorcade will now make its way from this hospital in Americus, Georgia, to a state university that she graduated from in 1946. And remember, right after that is when she married a young ensign, recently graduated from Annapolis, named Jimmy Carter, and began their improbable life adventure that would take them from planes to the White House and back. So, and now we see the motorcade leaving.
Andrew, you know, Rosalynn lost her father when she was just 13 years old. I imagine that had a tremendous impact on her. Did she ever speak about how she felt that help, you know, either had an impact on her character or an impact on the way she viewed the world?
Well, certainly there's an interesting story behind that, and this is very unique to the Carters. In my research, in my study, and what I did as a producer for the C-SPAN White House Historical Association series, First Ladies, Influence and Image, I was focused on first ladies. It was about first ladies. You really can't separate the Carters, and this goes back to her birth. President Carter's mother, Miss Lillian, was one of the delivery nurses when Rosalind Smith was born. And you fast forward through her life to her teens, as you mentioned, when Edgar Smith, her father, was dying. Miss Lillian, President Carter's mother, again, was the hospice nurse there in the Smith home as Mr. Edgar was dying and did eventually die. She was then taken by Miss Lillian out to the family farm, the peanut farm that we've heard and known so much about the years, because Mrs. Carter's, or then Rosalind Smith's, best friends were Jimmy Carter's younger sisters. So these two have been, you know, intertwined and in each other's lives from beginning, and losing a father at that young age, or any parent at that young age, especially in a house that was poor and was dependent on as much money and as many odd jobs as people could scrape together. Mrs. Carter's father was a farmer, a bus driver, a machinist, a mechanic. Her mother was a dressmaker and any kind of odd jobs in and around Plains, Georgia. Mrs. Carter says she didn't think she grew up poor until she got out in the world and realized how many things were out there and enjoyed some success of her own, both personal and professional, to realize, wow, we really didn't have much. So that's going to affect someone not just on a personal level in that you've lost your father, but in the sense that you've lost income. And she had to, as the oldest of four, I believe, Mrs. Carter, two brothers, and her sister Alethea, as I mentioned, that we saw in some of that footage there. You know, she had to take over as one of the heads of the household at a teenage, at 14, which is tough on anyone. But I think it's fascinating to see that, President Carter's family, and especially his mother, was such an instrumental part of Mrs. Rosalynn Carter's early childhood, and the families were so intertwined and knew each other so well from the very beginning.
All right. Well, Andrew and Mark, thank you so much for spending some time with us talking about this impressive former First Lady. Appreciate it.